I walked into Vanessa's office, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. It had been a long time since I'd felt this out of place, but there I was. She barely looked up as she spoke. "We don't need old men like you dragging us down," she said, flipping her hair like it was some sort of dismissive formality. The words hit me harder than I expected, though my face didn't show it. I just nodded, a sarcastic smile tugging at the corners of my mouth, and turned away. As I packed my desk, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't the anger or disbelief I had expected. No, it was a quiet, almost detached feeling, like I was watching someone else go through it. I had given 18 years to this place. 18 years of my life, training people who now avoided my gaze as I walked out the door. It didn't sit right, not one bit. But then again, nothing about the situation felt right. Vanessa, fresh out of business school, with her shiny degree and her polished ideas, had clearly decided the company needed something new. And well, I was just a relic. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't just business. It was personal in some way I couldn't quite put my finger on. But for now, I kept my mouth shut, gathered my things, and walked out the door, trying to hold on to that calm. As I cleared out my desk, the weight of it all hit me slowly. The box in my hands felt lighter than it should have, considering the years of work I was packing into it. Harper Machinery had been more than just a job to me. It had been a part of my life for almost 2 decades. Charles Harper, the man who had built this company from the ground up, had been more of a father to me than my own had ever been. He trusted me with everything: operations, the systems that kept the business running, the people who had become like family. Now here I was, holding a cardboard box of personal items, while the very company I had helped build seemed to slip away piece by piece. It wasn't just the company, though. It was the values that Charles had instilled in me. Values like loyalty, hard work, and consistency. And now those values were being replaced by something different. Something colder. Vanessa, with her new ideas and corporate jargon, was wiping away everything that had made Harper Machinery what it was. I could feel the betrayal creeping in, but it didn't make me angry. Not yet. It was something deeper. A quiet, insidious realization that everything I'd worked for was being erased, and I had no say in it. I glanced back at the production floor one last time, knowing that soon enough, it would be a shadow of what it had been. The equipment I had maintained, the systems I had built, soon, none of it would matter to the people running this place now. The gears would keep turning, but they would be turning in a new direction, one that felt foreign to me. I sat in my truck, the engine idling softly, but my mind was anything but still. The cardboard box sat on the passenger seat beside me, and I couldn't help but stare at it for a moment, like it was some kind of symbol. A symbol of everything that had led me to this point, and everything that was about to unfold. Vanessa may have thought she had the upper hand, but there was one thing she didn't know. My severance contract. Charles had insisted on that clause himself, back when my job was secure and things were running smoothly. A severance penalty, 2 full years' salary if I was terminated without cause. It was airtight. I'd always known it was there, but now, with the situation unfolding, it felt like the only thing between me and a real battle. I exhaled slowly, trying to gather my thoughts. I wasn't the kind of man who fought with emotion. No shouting, no drama, just clear, deliberate steps. The calmness in me felt almost unnatural, considering the storm brewing inside. But that's how I worked, how I always had. I had a lawyer ready, Harold Preston, someone who had been waiting for a case like this. It was time to fight back, to use what I had left, my knowledge, my experience, and that contract. As I sat there, hands resting on the wheel, I could almost see the wheels of the company in my mind, turning, and now coming to a halt as they learned what happens when you push out the people who built the foundation. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And I was ready. As I drove, my thoughts drifted to the life I had built, steady, reliable, predictable. The kind of life I thought I would always have. Linda, my wife of 29 years, had been the cornerstone of it all. I hadn't realized it at the time, but her calm presence had grounded me in ways I couldn't measure. When cancer took her 4 years ago, it was like losing a part of myself. But we had raised 2 kids together, both of them doing well now. My son, out in Denver with an engineering firm, had found his footing. My daughter, teaching 3rd grade in Cleveland, was following her heart. They were both successes in their own right, and that, in a way, made the loss of Linda a little more bearable. Yet now, as I sat there in my truck, staring out at the factory, I realized how much of that life had been built on the foundation of Harper Machinery. The company and everything I had put into it had been just as much a part of me as my family. I had dedicated nearly 2 decades to it, and now here I was, discarded like an old tool no longer needed. The calm I had felt earlier began to shift. I wasn't just upset about losing my job. It was more than that. It was the betrayal. Vanessa, with her polished ideas and corporate buzzwords, had come in and started dismantling everything that had made the company what it was. And for what? To replace experience with newness? To throw out decades of knowledge for some shiny new perspective? The resentment was quiet, simmering under the surface. I hadn't fought for anything in a long time, just kept my head down, kept things running smoothly. But now I felt the pull to stand up, to make sure that everything I had worked for wasn't just forgotten. This wasn't just about me. It was about what I had built, what Charles had built, and what Vanessa was ready to tear down. I couldn't let it go without a fight. I couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa and the changes she'd been pushing for ever since she'd taken over. At first, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was young, eager to make her mark. But as the months went by, it became clear that her version of modernization didn't have much room for experience or the people who had built Harper Machinery. It was all about bringing in new perspectives, she said. Fresh ideas. Which, in her eyes, meant pushing out anyone who remembered how things used to be. She'd started showing up at meetings, all business speak and flashy PowerPoint slides. Synergy, she'd call it. Market disruption. I could barely stand it. I could see Charles cringe when she spoke. He never called her out, but it was clear he didn't fully agree with her direction. I'd catch him looking at her, his face tight, like he was just waiting for her to crash the ship she was steering. And crash it she did. Over time, I watched her erode everything we had built. Our quality control was gutted, and components that used to be made in-house were outsourced to the cheapest bidder. What bothered me most wasn't just the changes, it was the disregard for the foundation, the years of sweat and effort that went into building a company that was trusted by hundreds of businesses. That trust was being tossed aside for the promise of higher margins and faster results. It didn't make sense. I could feel the disarray in the air now, and it wasn't just me. The whole company was on edge. People who had been with Harper for years were leaving, either pushed out or just beaten down by the constant shift in direction. Thomas, the head of engineering, had been there longer than I had. He was irreplaceable. But even he was starting to question whether sticking around was worth it. And Jennifer, our lab manager, she was the backbone of our quality control. But Vanessa didn't care about any of that. She had her vision, and if you didn't fit into it, you were expendable. I couldn't just sit back and watch this happen. Everything I had worked for, everything Charles had built, was crumbling in front of my eyes, all for the sake of a vision that didn't respect the past. I had to do something. But I wasn't going to be the one to tear it down. I was going to fight for what was right, even if that meant taking on the people who had once trusted me. The phone rang, breaking the silence that had settled in my truck. I glanced at the screen. Charles's name was on it. I hesitated before answering, knowing what the conversation would likely be about. Stanley, Charles's voice came through, thin and tired. What the hell happened yesterday? I took a breath, trying to keep my tone neutral. I had expected this call, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to say. Ask your daughter, I replied flatly, staring at the dashboard, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter than I meant to. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear the faint sound of Charles shifting in his seat, his voice becoming quieter. I did. She said you were resistant to the new direction, that you were undermining her authority with the floor team. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence hang there, and it felt heavier than any words I could say. Charles knew me better than that. Knew I wouldn't undermine anyone's authority, not in front of the team, not without a damn good reason. You're going to file, aren't you? His voice dropped, almost sounding resigned. Already have, I said. Harold Preston is handling it. I could hear him sigh heavily on the other end, a sound that spoke of regret and defeat. I told her to look at the contracts, he said, his voice tired. Told her before I stepped down that there were protections in place. I felt something shift inside me, though I couldn't quite place it. I wasn't angry. I didn't need to raise my voice, didn't need to make any threats. This was about principle now, not emotions. But Charles's next words stung more than I expected. She said she cleaned house yesterday. You, Thomas, Jennifer, anyone over 50. The words hit like a cold wave. Thomas, Jennifer, people who had been with the company for years like me, were being swept aside like they didn't matter. My jaw clenched, and I could feel that familiar burn of resentment creeping back into my chest. Is that the direction you wanted, Charles? I asked, my voice tight. Clearing out everyone who built the place with you? He didn't answer right away. His voice softened, barely above a whisper. You know it's not. But I gave her control. It's hers to run now. I wanted to say more, to argue, to demand answers. But I didn't. I just sat there, the weight of it all sinking in. My loyalty to Charles, the man who had taken a chance on me when no one else would, was still there, but now it felt like loyalty to a ghost. Charles's voice broke the silence again. I'm sorry, Stanley. I should have seen it coming. I didn't respond. The words felt hollow, and for the first time I realized just how much had changed. My loyalty, my trust, it all felt shaken. But there was one thing that was clear now. I wasn't just going to let this go. Not after everything I had invested, not after everything I had built. I ended the call without another word, my mind already racing ahead. I didn't need Charles's apology. What I needed was justice, and that meant fighting back. Vanessa could do what she wanted with the company, but I wasn't going down without a fight. As the days passed, the full extent of Vanessa's actions started to unfold. I was getting pieces of information from former colleagues, bits of whispers, phone calls, and one or two offhand comments. Jennifer, still stuck at Harper, had been a particularly valuable source. She'd sent me an internal memo showing the production delays that were already starting to affect key contracts. The numbers were grim, and the sense of panic was rising within the company. What surprised me, though, was the underlying cause. Vanessa's decisions were to blame. Jennifer confirmed what I had suspected. She was liquidating equipment. The specialized machines Charles had bought just last year, the ones we'd used for custom work, were being sold off at auction prices. Machines that were worth millions were being dumped for pennies on the dollar. And this wasn't just any equipment. This was the backbone of what had made Harper Machinery stand out. I sat in my office one evening, the realization sinking in like a weight in my chest. The company, which had stood as a testament to decades of hard work and integrity, was being stripped for parts. Vanessa was turning it into a hollow shell, all in the name of short-term gains. It wasn't just the equipment, she was also slashing budgets for departments that actually mattered. Quality control? Gone. Engineering? Understaffed and underpaid. I had watched her chip away at the heart of Harper for months, but now, it felt like the walls were finally crumbling. The worst part? She didn't even seem to care. She was too focused on her new vision to notice the damage she was causing. The employees who had been the lifeblood of the company, the ones who had stayed loyal through thick and thin, were now being treated like disposable parts in a corporate game. People like Thomas and Jennifer had poured their lives into Harper. They had given their all to make it succeed, and now they were being thrown aside. It didn't take long for me to realize that this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't even about the severance. It was about the people, the employees who had helped build this company, the ones who deserved better. I had spent years training them, watching them grow, and now they were being cast aside for some quick fix that Vanessa was hoping would save face. But it wasn't going to work. My resolve hardened. I wasn't going to sit back and let this happen. Not to them, and not to Charles's legacy. The battle ahead was no longer just about keeping my severance, it was about holding her accountable for the destruction she was causing. I had to fight not just for myself, but for the people who had given their lives to Harper, for the employees who still had hope. They deserved a future that wasn't dictated by someone who didn't understand what made the company great in the first place. I picked up the phone again. This time I wasn't calling a lawyer. I was calling Thomas, Jennifer, and the rest of the veterans. They needed to know what was happening and how we were going to fix it. It was time to fight back, not just for a paycheck but for the company we had all built together. I sat at my kitchen table, staring down at the contract again, the words now burning into my mind. The severance clause, 2 full years' salary if I was let go without cause, was there in black and white, and Harold had made it clear that it was airtight. I could have taken the money and walked away. I could have let the court settle it, taken the financial compensation, and left it at that. But something inside me shifted. It wasn't just about the money. Sure, $320,000 was a lot, but it wasn't what I needed. I didn't need that to survive. I needed something else, a sense of justice, a sense of dignity that couldn't be bought. This wasn't just about me being wronged. It was about the way Vanessa was throwing away everything Charles had built, everything we had worked for. It was about the people still at Harper, the ones who were quietly losing faith, unsure if they had a future in a place that no longer seemed to care about them. I called Harold. His voice was steady as ever when he answered, but there was an edge to it, a quiet understanding that this was no longer just a corporate case. It was personal now. "You ready to file?" he asked, his words blunt. "Yeah," I replied, my voice firmer than I expected. "But it's not just about the severance anymore. I want to show them that experience and value can't be overlooked, no matter how many buzzwords they throw around. I want them to see that what we built isn't just some asset to be discarded." Harold was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he spoke again, his voice more serious. "I get it, Stanley. I'll make sure we hit them where it hurts. Not just the money, everything else that's wrong with what they've done. We'll make it count." As I hung up the phone, I felt something inside me settle. It was no longer a matter of proving I was right. It was about proving something bigger, that the years of hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into Harper meant something. It was about showing Vanessa and everyone else that you couldn't just throw away people like they were disposable. That there was value in experience, in the foundation that had been laid over decades. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a mission. It was a fight for respect, for dignity, and for the people who had trusted me to lead them. This wasn't about revenge or anger anymore. It was about showing them that what they had tried to erase couldn't be wiped out so easily. It was about standing up for the things that mattered. The meeting room was cold, too quiet, the kind of sterile environment that made everything feel even more tense. I sat at the table with Harold beside me, the stack of paperwork between us a constant reminder of the battle ahead. On the other side, Vanessa sat, her posture rigid, eyes narrowing at the documents in front of her. I could feel her gaze flicking between Harold and me, her lips pressed tight as if she were trying to mask some hidden frustration. She was younger, more eager, but she was clearly out of her depth here. She had hoped that firing me would be simple, a matter of just brushing me aside. But now, with the contract in front of her, she was beginning to see that things weren't as easy as she thought. "We're not going to drag this out, Stanley," she said, her voice tight, almost forced. "We're offering you a settlement. 6 months severance. Take it or leave it." Her offer hung in the air like a challenge, but I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. The calm I felt inside was something I had worked for over the years, something that came from knowing exactly what I was entitled to. I met her gaze, not with anger or malice, but with the steady assurance that this wasn't just about money. It was about principle. Harold leaned forward slightly, his tone measured but firm. "I'm afraid, Miss Harper, that the terms of Mr. Rowe's severance are clear. Section 12, Paragraph 3. Termination without cause, as defined in Appendix C, entitles him to 2 full years of severance. That's 24 months' salary, approximately $320,000. The tension in the room shifted, and I could see Vanessa's expression tighten further. She didn't speak for a moment, just flicked her eyes over the contract, the words clearly sinking in. It was as if she couldn't quite believe it. But it was all there in black and white. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms, and for a moment, the frustration in her face softened into something else, something almost defeated. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, trying to regain her composure. "This is an outdated clause, and frankly, it's not relevant to the company anymore." I could feel the anger brewing just below the surface, but I didn't let it show. I wasn't going to let her dismiss me that easily. "We're not asking for anything beyond what's in the contract," Harold said calmly, his voice cutting through the rising tension. "This is straightforward, Miss Harper. If you believe Mr. Rowe's termination was for cause, then we'll see the documentation to prove it. Otherwise, we'll proceed with legal action. I watched her. She was fuming, her frustration growing with every word. She knew she had no leg to stand on, but she wasn't ready to admit it yet. The suspense in the room was palpable, like the moment before a storm breaks. Vanessa was losing control, and I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of satisfaction. I had spent so long being the steady hand, the one who kept the gears turning, but now, in this moment, it was clear. I wasn't just going to walk away. Not quietly. Not when I had so much more to fight for. The months after the merger passed quickly, each day a reminder of how much had changed, and how much I had changed. The acquisition of Harper's Custom Hydraulics division by Cornerstone Precision was finalized without fanfare, but the result was undeniable. The company was thriving again, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The workers who had once been scattered, uncertain about their futures, were now part of something new, something built with respect for the past and a focus on the future. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Standing in the expanded production facility, I watched as the team moved efficiently between stations. The hum of the machines, the rhythm of the work, it was a sound I hadn't realized I'd missed so much. Thomas, Jennifer, and the others were here, their expertise and dedication a testament to what we had built. The vision we had for Cornerstone wasn't just about profits. It was about creating something that would last, a place where experience was valued, where people like us could take pride in what we were doing. Charles had been right about many things. When he had asked me to return to the company, to help salvage what was left of Harper's legacy, I'd done it not out of anger or revenge, but because I wanted to build something lasting. The frustration I had felt when Vanessa pushed me out, when she tried to erase the company's history, had led me here. I wasn't just fighting for what was mine, I was fighting for the people who had trusted me, for the company that had been built with grit and dedication. Now, as I stood with Charles, looking over the new facility, I realized that my actions hadn't been motivated by the need to get back at anyone. They had been about something bigger. I wanted to prove that experience and respect for the foundation of something mattered. That no matter how hard people like Vanessa tried to rewrite the rules, there was a way to honor what came before and still look to the future. I wasn't just holding on to the past, I was building on it. Charles handed me a report, and as I scanned the figures, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The company was in the best shape it had been in years. The margins were up, employee retention was stable, and innovation was thriving. I never imagined it would turn out this way, Charles said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. Neither did I thought to myself. But somehow it had. The phone call from Vanessa, asking for investment, felt like the final chapter in a story I no longer needed to be a part of. She had taken her settlement and disappeared to Miami, leaving behind the wreckage of what she tried to build. Charles hadn't changed his mind about her. She was a memory now, just a part of the company's past that couldn't be erased. As I watched the workers below, the sense of closure settled in. The path forward was clear. I had been part of shaping the future, and now I could step back and watch it grow, knowing that it would continue to thrive long after the mistakes of the past had faded into history.